Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back to episode 11 of Bankers, Bandits, Bullion, and Bucks with Bryce. It's been a couple of weeks. Some things have been changing, moving, shifting around the countryside. And I don't know, Bryce, but I think I might have broke something somewhere along the way because Facebook and YouTube won't let me stream tonight. I have spent half the day trying to figure that out, but apparently we're getting too popular for the cool kids over at Facebook. Bryce, what do you think about that?
Yeah, man. Once you get a certain level of notoriety, and you say too many good things about the world and the people that are in it, and too many bad things about the stupid people trying to ruin it, they don't like you anymore for some reason. It's amazing that.
It's funny that they're getting, kind of predictable about that. So, for everybody that's out there, if you managed to find us on one of the alternative platforms that still allows us to get on here and chirp, I'm glad to have you here. Make sure you give this a like and a share, and double check that you're subscribed. They've been notorious at unsubscribing people because they think that you're no longer interested, and particularly if somebody takes a little break from things like I did while I was moving halfway across the continent, they think that nobody's interested and we're out of business. But that is absolutely not the case. You can still find us on whatsupcanada.org, lgm.news, Wimkin, Rumble, of course, Instagram, X, and this is the funny part. They'll let me stream on my personal profile on Facebook, but not our platform profile. So, uh, lots been happening. We've got some articles and whatnot to bring up. Guys, this is gonna take forgive any technical difficulties that we might have from here. I might have lost my touch with touching buttons and this and that and the other thing, but lots been going on, Bryce. Lots. I think this is. I think there was 2 weeks that we didn't stream, and I've got a couple of articles that I have pulled up that I'm just going to kind of scream through for everybody here, and that's going to kind of set up some of the conversation that we're going to dig into a little bit deeper. And so now that I'm back and up and running, guys, and there was a little bit of mystery as to whether I was actually going to be able to get this off on time tonight, this show, and tomorrow. Yes, we will get back to the watch party tomorrow. But after this show tonight, I will, of course, publish all of the links and all of the information that we cover here tonight into a Substack article to make sure that you guys can all have access to it all. So, just going to screen through a couple of headlines here, and Bryce will probably shake his head as we go here. But
Always do.
the in all indications are is this cabal is doubling down on the ESG DEI insanity, and this they're a pot committed in all of this, and we'll dig into some of these other indicators that are kind of telling us that this is the case. They expect to stay in power, and I'm hoping that everybody goes and digs through some of these articles. So we've got things to talk about next week again, and this is one of those indicators is that they have just launched a sustainable supplier SME program. And while these guys seem hell bent on manufacturing and establishing straight up Marxism, communist dictatorship under the United Nations, World Economic Forum, WHO, and we'll touch on that in just a little bit here too. There's some interesting stuff about that, but we're on the inside of this bubble looking in when it comes to this ESG, DEI, this corruption, this collusion, all of this stuff. And it's sometimes difficult for us to see what's happening on the outside of the world. And what is the rest of the world saying about our illustrious management teams here that are hell bent on implementing this here? They're basically telling the world that they don't want any part of it, and they're moving more and more and more into doing business with the BRICS nations. There's going to be lots to catch up on that over the next couple of weeks. But these guys are setting records while we're collapsing. And make no mistake that this is 100% intentional. I had, this is kind of a bit of a funny one. I didn't get it pulled up here, but Macron in France is actually leaning on Justin Trudeau here in Canada to end the sanctions on Russian titanium so that they can keep building Airbuses. So this tells us how much they really give two shits about what's going on over there. It's only about the money and the convenience for these guys. So
And control.
and control, 100%. While the rest of the world is fleeing from
And
this
burning.
insanity over to BRICS nations, like them or not, they're doing business. They want the multipolar world. We just seem to be skidding down a greased set of tracks on this, Bryce. So, tell us what you think about some of that insanity. Is that 100% on par, on track, as you expected? And how does this impact where we are today in the grand scheme of watching our dollars slide out of our fingers?
A lot to unpack there, so give me a couple minutes to unpack all that. So the first and foremost is you got to understand what ESG is. Okay, so ESG, if anybody doesn't know, is environmental social government. So it's this bullshit thing that they put together that was basically like, hey, stakeholder capitalism has to replace shareholder capitalism, because shareholder capitalism was basically I invest in a company, you, the company, work for me, the investor, and I get a return based on the maximized profits of the company. That's how it worked. That's how it's always worked, and they want to change that. Now, stepping back for a second, that they've also maximized the amount of profit they've taken out of that process and used that process to influence the governments and the corporations and everything else and the regulation around corporations, so that the oligarchy that is invested in all of these corporations gets the maximum amount of control that they can under that previous system. But think of ESG equals equity, equity equals communism, because this is what it is. So you have essentially what is a seizure of the means of production through capital controls in the financial world, which is what ESG is. So essentially, what ESG does is it gives corporations a corporate credit score that if you don't do X, Y, and G, which includes minority, diversity, equity, inclusion, all the DEI garbage that they push, that's where this is coming from. So anytime any company is pushing DEI, it's for the purpose of increasing their ESG score so that they get better funding and they get better deals, essentially, because what they can do essentially is, hey, your ESG score is too low, you got to up that stuff to work with us, or you don't get our money and you don't get our network. So it's the people at the top that have created communism at the bottom that are using that communism to control everybody in the middle so that they have ultimate control. That's what ESG is, right? I don't care about what anybody says, and that is what is happening with it. That's why they're doing it in that way, because they want a corporate credit score so that they control corporations and be able to tell them, do this or you lose all your money, your customers, and your funding, and your company dies. That's what that.
It's all about equality of income or the equality of outcome, sorry, for all those that they control.
Yeah,
And that's exactly what this article here was. This organization that they've now launched is in short form an alternative community for people that are approved and follow the ESG rules to help them succeed. So this is the alternative parallel community within the ESG universe that they are using to extort the companies and corporations to fall into compliance with this equality of outcome.
yeah, very very good word for that. This is what it is. It is extortion. It is basically a company in this case, but it's so you got to ask the question, where is ESG coming from? Who gives out these numbers? Who is in control of this stuff? Well, it's ultimately the hedge funds and the banks that are like doling out this money, right? And so ultimately this comes from the banks. It comes from the central banks. That's where all of this stuff ultimately comes from, right? And
The same shareholders, all the
yeah,
same controllers, all the same companies, just with different names, shell gamed around between who owns them, who operates them, while they literally suck the blood. Exactly, here, Larry Flink, BlackRock, and
yeah,
it's
BlackRock.
it's this ties so directly into the other company that I represent. We're helping with New World Precious Metals, but with the Patriot Switch, that company will never be on this list because they're not controlled and they manufacture here in North America, and they are in the old consumer model where you build a quality product here and you distribute it yourself.
Sounds
So
racist.
this is the point of these organizations, is to crush those that will not comply. That's the
E-
point and purpose of it. And they control
Exactly.
every 100% of every purchase that you make in every box store, every grocery store, every convenience store, regardless of the label or the illusion of choice or the illusion of the sign outside of the door. Almost 98% of the products that we buy go back into funding this, because ultimately, when you go further up the chain of who owns them, they're all going to be in this little club.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the other questions that we got to unpack there that you asked is, how does it affect you and me, and what is the long game ultimately? Where's this going? Okay, and so the other side of that, so you have the corporate side, which is ESG and your corporate credit score. Well, in Canada and all of the West, they're building a social credit score individually, and the way that they're going to do it in Canada specifically, I don't know about the other places, but they're going to connect your carbon credit score to your name. So my bank, Van City, is a credit union that's been around for a long time. I've had them most of my life, and they are rolling out this process on their Visa cards to begin with. Be like, hey, you can check this box and see how much credit or carbon credits you're using, so you can save the environment. Nonsense. But now it's voluntary, but eventually I'm sure it's going to be mandatory. And something that I want to make a point of is that you will probably notice this because I say this quite often. But if you travel around the town that you're in or the city that you're in, you'll probably notice that there's a huge amount of surveillance cameras on all of the intersections now, right? And so if you have a digital ID and a central bank digital currency, and you have the carbon credits connected to that, and you have 15-minute cities that are now going to monitor you and where you're going to go, right? They can give you a hit to your credit score. This is literally what they do in China that they're trying to push into Canada and the West. And the way that they're going to do that, and one of the reasons they're pushing 15-minute cities, is they need an AI to manage all of this, because no human could ever do that level of data and management, right? And so, yep,
Human enforcement would not be willing to be as compliant to the abuse as they have intended. That's the point of it. We have a militarized police enforcement community and services here in Canada that didn't used to be that way. But after the what was it, 2011 G20 riots in Toronto, which was 100% manufactured, they started turning all of our police forces, because that was the justification. That was the reason, the excuse, to turn all of our police agencies to literally, militarized forces with equipment that was never ever going to be needed, because they fully intended to sow the disruption. And it's this problem reaction solution thing that they keep repeating over and over and over again. And meanwhile, the pasture that we're in, thinking we're fighting for freedom, continues to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And they're continuing. This goes back down to the doubling down of what they're enforcing on the Helen Grew case in Edmond, or in Ottawa, where they're literally persecuting this officer for doing her job,
yeah, exactly.
in discovering improprieties in the deaths of children. Anybody that actually attempts to do their job in enforcement suddenly becomes the criminal and targeted. So they're refusing to remove any of the policies that they implemented. All of the control measures are still in place. All of their mandates are still in place, basically, and they are still persecuting anybody that spoke out against us, while we've got Teresa Tam out there chirping away about the next big thing that we have to be prepared for, the H5N1. This it's probably a good thing I'm not streaming on Facebook and YouTube tonight because they will really be pissed off at me for this. But this is the part that they can't seem to grasp is they are following an agenda, and we are discovering and exposing it faster than they can implement it, and we're seeing. A lot of discussion, and we talked about this just briefly for a second before we get started on the show. But the WHO pandemic treaty, there's a lot of celebrating going on right now out there about it having been defeated. Tedros threw in the towel. Well, wow. And having a discussion with James Roguski this morning, who is on them like flies on stink. That is so not the case. What they have done is they are regionalizing it, and they are 100% carrying on with it because we have this misconception about it. It's about control and weapons manufacturing, i.e., jabs. That's what they're fighting over, and who's going to get to produce the have the factories and own the factories that'll produce the jabs when they implement the next big bad thing. So we're seeing, people are celebrating like Louisiana. They said, we're not adhering to the WHO pandemic treaty. Out. It's out. It's not going to, we're not going to implement it here in Louisiana. Great, Louisiana. But anytime anybody steps outside of that border of Louisiana, guess what? You're going to be put into quarantine camp until you relent and get stuck with it as well. So we're seeing small little pockets that are doing what is necessary to protect their region. But at the end of the day, if we don't end this whole thing from the source, they're going to get us one little small territory at a time.
Yeah, and this kind of puts into very stark luminosity, let's say, that if you don't organize on a grand scale or even at a local scale, this is what the powers that be that are organized at a grand scale are able to do. Because even if we win a battle here or a battle there, like, bro, I'm still fighting a war against you, and that's a road bump, not a blockade, right? And so if we're going to defeat this truly, everybody across the country really has to be united against, like, hey, I don't want to give up my sovereignty to Bill Gates and his bunch of bozos.
Well, and this is where, unbeknownst to people, um, because people are so engaged in whatever particular fight that they're fighting, they're
Yeah.
not necessarily seeing perhaps the impact and what the consequences of their fight might have in a different arena or a different battlefront of all of this. And when I'm saying that, I'm saying that because these treaties like this, whether Trudeau signs this into it in its entirety, which they already are. They're trying to expand on it, make it bigger, badder, stronger, and include climate change as a pandemic. But what ends up happening is if we see a province like Quebec or Alberta, perhaps, to separate and go through the Constitutional Convention process, pull an Iceland and set their own constitution. What that does is it breaks immediately all of these international treaties that Trudeau and Harper before him and all of these clowns that have been giving away our rights and freedoms, selling our industry and our well-being and everything about this country off to these foreign entities. That automatically breaks those things. So there's all kinds of things at play here yet that they're really watching, which is why they are so hell bent on keeping us fully engrossed and immersed in the political shenanigans and charades. And it's the equivalent of, and we can't, we were going to talk about this. We can't escape what they're doing to Trump because that's exactly what they're doing to us, except all of us are on trial and they're trying to gaslight our beliefs into believing that we're all the criminals.
Yeah, insanity, and I think Trudeau and all of his ilk are basically on that path to decriminalize all of the things that they would be guilty of, so that when they do actually do these things, like, hey, it's not illegal to totally steal your money and corruption's not legal, or not illegal, and blah blah blah. Like they decriminalize freaking pedo porn in Germany for God's sakes, man. Like How can anybody make the argument that, like, hey, banging kids is cool, bro? Don't worry about it. It's all good. Love is love, man. How is anybody making that argument? The fact that it is, and we're living in that world, is just
Well,
it just
it's
shows you where we are.
it's the fact of the 0.01% controlling us and forcing
Yeah,
us to accept that and
exactly.
digest that,
Yeah, but
and
people are
that's gonna
accepting it. That's my point. They're like, they may
yeah,
be saying nonsense, but we're accepting nonsense. I think that's more on us. That, like, yo, are we not on the same side here? Do we not all agree that pedophilia is bad? Like, what are we talking about here? You know what I mean?
there's so much to that in understanding these cycles of things, and that insanity is absolutely unsustainable.
Yeah,
This is going to end, but how badly is it going to look when it does end? How much when it swings the other way? How much worse could it possibly be at that point in time? Because when people have had enough and then they're continuously pushed, they don't react with an equal and opposite reaction. They react with a sledgehammer for
yeah,
a penny nail. And these freaks are insistent on pushing people to that level of desperation and frustration through the blatant abuse and crime sprees that seem unending. People are going to start taking those kinds of things into their own hands when it's in their grill, and the scary part is the establishment, so long as we continue to accept this, the establishment will look at those people that are defending themselves from that freak show riding around on his bicycle naked in front of them, waving plastic toys at their kid, and they're going to get upset, but they're going to be the criminals.
yeah. It's off the charts, and there's actually a good quote that I have. You continue to talk for a sec while I bring it up, because I think it perfectly encapsulates that.
Well,
Um,
there's a actually,
where
I
to
just
go?
will touch on this just for a second again before I put it away. I've got this, guys. I'm going to add this into the Substack tomorrow. But this is a document that basically um, debunks Teresa Tam with the entire narrative and discussion on the H5N1, unless there's a caveat to this statement, unless they have biologically weaponized something far, far worse through their gain of function research that they were doing in Winnipeg, that they are so desperate to keep hidden and covered up because Canada is guilty of some very serious atrocities.
Oh yeah,
So, this
that I'm.
document, guys, is going to help you be prepared for when they start jacking up the propaganda. You've got something to fight back with. And what we see historically with this is when we get ahead of them on their false flags before they get them launched, they change them. And monkeypox, right? That one disappeared because we didn't buy it, and it was done and over real quick. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to make
exactly.
sure everybody goes to my Substack tomorrow for this document, because this is going to be a very important tool for you moving forward. So,
Yeah, make sure to share that with me too, and I'll throw it in the mural. And so I'm
okay.
sharing my screen here because I think this perfectly encapsulates where we are. First, we overlook evil, then we permit evil, then we legalize evil, then we promote evil, then we celebrate evil, and then we persecute those who still call it evil. And as you can probably notice with what we're talking about today, we are really at the end of that area, that process. And there's one more that I'll share as well, is that because this is the other part of the other side of this, which basically says all tyrannies rule through fraud and force, but once the fraud is exposed, they must rely exclusively on force. And I think this is a perfect encapsulation of what's happening in the U.S. right now. And I said this yesterday as well, is that we're basically known, and Putin said this in one of his speeches, that we're known as the golden billion here in the West, like the billion odd people in North America and Europe that have all of the rights, all of the power, all of the money, all of the blah 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 for the last like 100 odd years, right? And we're known as the golden billion because we have rights and opportunities that the rest of the planet really doesn't. You know, you're in these Eastern authoritarian countries, and like, you know, the power doesn't even work, and everybody's a strong armed dictator, and you have, the slavery of your children and shit that work in the condo mines, all this stupid nonsense, right? So they really looked to us for a long time through history. It's like, that's what we're trying to emulate. That's what we're trying to get to. And the thing that's happening with Trump, despite what you may think about the person himself, the fact that the trumped up charges themselves and the way that it was weaponized against him is part and parcel of the fraud that they are trying to put forward to prevent him from, potentially wiping them out, right? In whatever he thinks that they're going to do. And let me just finish this point really quick, is that if and or when that fails, or if it does fail, the next step is force, right? So we are literally at the very, very end of our opportunity to do anything about this stuff peacefully, because we just went through 3 years of bullshit with COVID, and they were at the precipice of using force then. We went through that and we didn't push back far enough, and so now what they're going to do, like, you losers had your opportunity. Now we're coming in with the hammer and the sickle, and anybody that doesn't get hammered is going to get sickled at the knees. Through the straight up
Well,
communism they're pushing.
it's the manufactured destabilization and destruction. We all sat here for the last 50 years and thought color revolutions could only happen in uncivilized, third world
Exactly.
countries. Well,
Exactly.
they've done exactly that to us, and now what I'm really, really afraid of is, we're at that point, and you start to add the frustration level with the desperation, and when they see that somebody like Trump could, like, that was just the most obscene abuse of the justice system, and the biggest sham in American history. It's like they're poking. They want the implosion of the American people, and this is why they're continuously setting these things up. George Floyd, and now the Palestinians. There was somebody that was interviewing somebody in Chicago the other day. The purge is about to start in these Democrat cities where all of the working class have fled. They've abandoned the lower class and just swamped them with migrants that are coming and taking what little bit the blacks have left. And do you think they're going to go to the police station and ask for help in a Democrat city? No, the purge is about to begin, and it's going to give them again that justification that they're so looking for to crack down with the biggest almighty hammer. And these are, all of these things is why they're, where it, they're punching us with 8 arms at the same time. um, this and part of it here, I wasn't really didn't really want to dive into this tonight, but this is a part of it. This is some of the things that they don't want us seeing, that Ukrainians are losing the war so terribly. It's undescribable. The other side that isn't, drinking the woke Biden Kool-Aid in our propaganda, they know that Zelensky is no longer a legitimate leader and has no right to negotiate peace in Ukraine. But so that, all of the, I guess, if we need to use a divider, the nations that are leaving the U.S., our Western hegemony, and and getting, into bed with the BRICS nations, they're done propping up this charade called Zelensky in Ukraine. So these guys are getting desperate, and we are not getting the truth about what's going on over there. They keep talking about letting Ukraine use these long range weapons. Well, there's a problem with that. It takes Western soldiers to operate these weapons. Ukrainian soldiers cannot operate them. And Russia has said, if you tell Ukraine they can do this, we will kill your soldiers and declare war on your nations. This is an absolute attempt by the West to provoke escalation. And right now, they're already doing it. They're already using them. They took out 2 ferries yesterday. They're going after some of Russia's strategic defensive equipment. But
They've
this is a
attacked their bombers already too. That happened last year, bro. I
Yep.
thought that was going to be World War III like that. But the Russians, to their credit, have shown a lot of restraint. But I think there's the point to be
100%.
made that at some point they're going to be like, you know what? Screw it. It's
Russians don't
gloves are
bluff.
off. We're going to war, bro.
Russians don't bluff, and
Yeah.
they're not wrong in saying you put in Macron case, saying telling Macron you put your soldiers on Ukrainian territory, you're declaring war on us. They are literally manufacturing this escalation, but it's only the Kool-Aid drunk globalists, the Five Eyes nations per se, the NATO controllers, the Trudeau's, Biden's, Macron's, and Sunak's in England, that these illegitimate leaders, I don't believe any one of them was elected fairly. I don't believe any one of our nations had a free and fair election I don't know. I don't want to speculate how many elections, but I don't think that we all know that Biden isn't a legitimate president. And pretty much enough evidence to convince anybody that's objective that Trudeau is not a legitimate leader. With the foreign interference in our elections. And this is another sore point that I'm kind of off on a tangent. I guess I've been storing it up for a couple weeks, but all of this squabbling about the CCP interference in our elections. It's such bullshit. What about the German unelected influence in our elections with Klaus Schwab and all of his young global leaders that have penetrated our cabinet? Is that not foreign influence in our
Well, to be fair, I
elections?
think in all of it is personally. So all the same, there's lots of other nations that are doing that. And to be fair, lobbying
100%.
at all is interference in the elections and our government
Exactly
because
my
it's legalized
point.
bribery. So what are we even talking about? The system's literally
Right?
built so that rich people can have control over our country.
This is about the noise of the charade between Pierre and the conservatives and the liberals, because it's all foreign influence that is affecting our country, and we have this much say anymore. And this is to the point where Canadians, unfortunately, are the last ones on the planet to take up violence, but the point of this is, guys, is other nations are going to be starting to do so, and that is the last thing that I want in our country. But they're pushing, and we've got to figure out ways to not get that triggered.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good point to make of why you should be getting food at the very minimum, because at some point your shit's gonna go sideways, and when social cohesion breaks down and there's a purge or there's a battle or people start rioting and burning shit in the street in the summer of love and all the other nonsense that they've been doing for the last bunch of years, when that happens, nobody is going to be moving food around and farming if they got to look over after their own family. So if you see this, anybody that does see this, I highly recommend that you start getting food for your family that's going to keep for a long time. Because if you don't, well, you don't want to be going to the store last when everybody's going there for their last meal. So
Every month you wait right now, it's costing you double next month.
exactly. And so it's kind of an investment too, that if you have food and somebody doesn't, well, they'll probably pay you a lot of money for the food that they don't have. Sorry, my cat's joining us.
An emotional, interesting conversation, and there's so many different directions on that. But so just kind of circle back here a little bit to one of the other ones that we were going to talk about and bring up tonight here.
Oh,
Pull.
while you're doing that, I want to mention this to everybody because I think it's interesting. So one of the things I wanted to mention tonight was over the last 2 weeks, Microsoft came out with the most Orwellian thing possible. So if you have Windows 11, they rolled out. I think they're either rolling it out or they already rolled it out. One of the two is that there's this thing called Recall, which is essentially a screen recording and screen capture of everything that you do on your computer that is locally stored, and that you'll be able to just pull back in a timeline. You can see everything you ever did. Now, this is typically done on a cloud because I have this software on my computer that I use for myself, right? So because I record something and then I can send it to somebody or whatever. But this is Microsoft doing it at a kernel level, so it'll be stored on the computer. And because the Microsoft's online all the time, guaranteed that they have a backdoor into it. So this is essentially Microsoft having the ability to monitor and watch and look at everything that you do on your computer, start to finish at any time, and see what you're doing on the screen. So if you have Windows 11, I highly suggest that you look into that and get rid of it and start looking into Linux. Because after Windows 10, which is what I have, is done, I'm not going to use Windows after this. I'm never going to touch Windows again. So I'm looking into Linux.
Well, this just kind of the latest thing with Microsoft. They are how do I put this? The Pegasus program was built to run off of the Microsoft operating system initially. So
U.S. military runs off of Microsoft too.
yeah, so Masad and Ghislaine Maxwell's sisters and brothers over there have had backdoor access to every Microsoft device since 2015, 2014, somewhere in that neighborhood, including every intelligence and spy agency in the basically the in the known universe. But this is just now, and that's the thing about this. They go after the big guys and then they get them. And then, now they're down to absorbing all of us at a micro level. Every little kernel of data and information is what makes their matrix go in circles. This is the foundation of the information that they need to make the social credit system and the 15-minute cities and all of that stuff work. That's what makes it happen. So we've got a little bit of time here. I want to play this whole video here, if that's all right, guys. It's only 1 minute and 17 seconds, but this guy, everybody needs to get to know this guy a little bit more, and we'll talk about him in a second after I play this.
A cohesive city.
I could make this
opportunities
work.
for local living.
Population is rapidly growing, and we have to be.
Why is their population growing?
A cohesive city with opportunities for local living.
Population is rapidly growing, and we have to be able to accommodate for that. Right now, the plans we have are kind of Frankenstein together over decades.
The 15 new district plans and corresponding bylaws will replace 54 existing planning documents dating back to the 1980s.
Our city is growing. And the more we can accommodate within existing infrastructure and existing neighborhoods, better it is for the taxpayers as well.
Administration says the goal is to accommodate 600,000 new residents in redeveloped areas, with 50% of all new home units added through infill. The plan also calls for half of all future travel to be done by transit, and for residents to access all their daily needs within 15 minutes. Not everyone supports the plan.
My understanding is that this means I will need to stay within my district to meet all my needs so that the city can meet its climate plan objectives.
I don't think Edmontonians can afford to be part of a renovation experiment of this size so quickly.
I think, unfortunately, a lot of the district plan in particular have been derailed by 15-minute cities, conspiracy theories, world economic forums, etc. At the end of the day, this is about land use.
We are building.
So,
conspiracy that's literally happening as you speak in the segment. Nonsense.
Right? You're literally talking about wiping out 50 years of zoning bylaw development, community dialogue input. All of a sudden, everything that people have given for feedback for the last 50 years is now trash, and it's only a conspiracy theory that these guys are trying to corner us into people coop, high density situation where we're not going to need a vehicle. We're not, everything is going to be dependent on public transit. No more holiday for you. And this is, why this guy, and this is a wash, rinse, repeat. of exactly the federal level, washing and rinsing and repeating itself at the junior level. This Mayor Amarjeet is a former Khalistani terrorist. He was spent time locked up in prison, and here he is running a major urban center in Canada. What is it with our acceptance of these convicted terrorists running our freaking country? It is really hard not to swear at what these guys are, talking down their noses to us like we're a bunch of uneducated, absolutely illiterate, ignorant hicks that haven't been able to figure out jack squat, and we're just conspiracy theorists while they are playing this charade out in front of our face. These are the guys that need to be locked up. I was thinking about this. The only difference between the local thug that steals $5 and these clowns is that thugs with power do even more bigger, worse, diabolical, unthinkable things. And then they tell us that we're the stupid ones.
Yeah. And I think there's the point to be made that when you have all of these things being pushed forward, and there's people that are like, hey, this is a problem, be wary about this. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about that. It's not going to happen. And then they're pushing it forward. Like, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory that you think that's going to happen, even though they're doing it. They're literally lying. It's an insult to our intelligence to think that we are not seeing you for who you are, right? And it's a ridiculous idea to me that these people are still in power. Like, how do we have anybody as an official person in Canada that's from another country at all? Like, how do you get to be an official in another country if you're not from that country? I don't even get the logic there.
This is literally every servant of the agenda has been deputized and weaponized. That if they're like Mr. Smith from the Matrix. It's the jealous husband. You looked at another man, you must be beat. And whether you did or not is absolutely irrelevant. But every servant of this agenda is going to come and beat you in the head if you dare to look sideways and question anything that they say or do. It is literally that level of abuse from every single so-called elected official. If you try to have some input in it, you will be beat at how dare you look at me.
Yeah. And this is, again, I think, a really important illustration of why you need to be a part of your community and take responsibilities from a civic perspective of what happens in your community. Because how many people are in Edmonton who voted for this idiot, right? How did he get in power? Who's the process? Like, every time that you farm out and say, "Oh, I don't want to do anything about it. Everything's corrupt." Well, this is what happens: is that corrupt people get in because there's no oversight and there's no consequences from the citizens of the constituency, whatever it happens to be, that force people to be either you answer these questions and you prove your actions, or you get removed, right? And one of the things that I always push for is that you have to be a part of your community, or shitty people take over your community, right? And this is an example of when all of these mayors, because this is what happened, I guarantee you, all of these mayors went to the WEF thing that they had for the global civic society or whatever the hell it was called, and they got told, like, hey boys, this is the game plan, this is what you're doing, this is how it's going to work, and this is what we're going to do. And then you're going to say this, that, and the other thing, and we're going to pay you lots of money, and you're going to live high on the hog as long as you screw over your constituency and everybody that's around you. And they're like, sounds good, give me the money, boss.
And this is why Trudeau flies around the country and he has these mayors meetings, but won't meet with the premiers, because these mayors are all sworn to the covenant of strong mayors, which are his little minion demons to implement all of these policies that are dreamt up by Mr. Schwab and co. And Trudeau is here being the lieutenant of the WEF Gestapo Fourth Reich Mafia. And that's really the exact same. These guys are cardboard cutouts. They're all implementing the exact same thing. The manufactured destruction and destabilization so that they can facilitate the implementation. You can't build a sky rise on top of a hut. You have to move it clear it, lay the foundation, all of those things. And it's like, when are we going to intervene on the construction of all of this? Because if they get this fortress built, it's going to be very, very difficult. We're going to be awful hungry and weak, and we're not going to be able to do anything at that point. So this is where it's, over the next while, I'll be, doing more on unification of effective measures and means. We talk every week about getting the basics. And you talk about it, about the food. We need that. We need the alternative currency, whether it's food or precious metals. If you have precious metals, you're going to be in a better situation than somebody that has not. Because as the world shrinks and the outside world is doing business in those kinds of commodities, they're not going to look at our fiat currency. You want to get out of the country, they're not going to take our money. If you got a slab of silver or gold, though, you might be able to do business with somebody elsewhere. It's just escalating, speeding up quicker and quicker and quicker, and we need to figure out how to bring more people into the educated circle of this. Localism is the 100% safe and effective cure for globalism. And if Edmonton had enough of a population that was doing the work of Maggie Braun and the Kickley organization in Edmonton, we wouldn't be seeing this headline right now. But they've got us so compartmentalized, terrorized, demonized, and thinking that we have different problems all across the country. It's all the same thing. It's all the same agenda. It's like a race to getting a puzzle put together. Some provinces, they've got it a little bit more together than others, but at the end of the day, every one of these major urban center mayors is the direct facilitator of that. And I know people are fighting hard for their smaller communities, but it's the urban centers that Trudeau owns in this agenda, or the World Economic Forum owns in this agenda, and we have to find ways to get stronger together and find less things to fight and argue about.
Yeah, and we really have to be united in kind of some core things. Did you ever watch that video that I sent you about the new right?
To be honest with you,
It was a few weeks ago for sure.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring it up is that the guy making the video made a really good point, is that, we have to be really united on a couple main things. One of them is truth, one of them is honesty, and one of them is justice, right? I think that those are the three things. There might have been one other thing. I don't remember the third. But the truth and the justice part is really important, right? We've got a bunch of governments all around the world that are like, hey, doing crime is cool. So they're going to, oh, wow, you got a lot of crime over there. I guess we better throw in the hammer and lock everybody down to keep you safe, right? But if we all care about truth, and there's a whole bunch of people that are lying to us, why do we not have the power to kick their dumb ass out for lying to us, right? This is supposed to be a free and open democratic society. Well, if I don't have a voice, I don't have a vote, and it's not free and open and democratic anymore, what are we talking about? We upgrade that stuff, you know what I
mean? Well, what we have to get to, we're seeing people that are admitting now, that the evidence was false. People lied, people died, but yet there is still no move to accountability on that. The Faucis of the world, the Theresa Tams of Canada, these people, they're continuing to march to the same drum, while we are, gaining ground on it all, we have to continue to fortify ourselves and strengthen ourselves. And to think about it this way, even if we did win, knock the whole thing down right now, we would still be on our own as to how to rebuild and how to survive in our communities. If we took the corruption away right now, the whole infrastructure would literally come apart. There wouldn't be enough people in the system. There would be no finances in the system. So whether we build our alternative communities and strengthen and fortify them now or after the collapse, it's just going to be a whole lot easier these days right now. So take a page out of Don Jr.'s book and get another 10-ounce bar of silver, because your hunch is on point, I think, Don. Confidence in the U.S. and Canadian dollar is sinking like the Titanic.
Thanks to Freeland and the communists running the country into the ground. And I talked to the guy named Peter Merrick yesterday, who's his his business is helping people get their money out of Canada. And he's saying that one of his partners that they're working with, they can't take another client for a year because they're so busy with people trying to move out of Canada because of all this insane stuff happening. So at the same time, with the people that know what's going on are trying to get the hell out, we're getting inundated with a bunch of people that are trying to destroy the place. So that doesn't go well long term.
It's exactly they're doing the same thing to our entire country and all of our major urban centers as what I described earlier in Chicago.
Yeah.
You get on a public transit. If if you grew up in your major city, get on a public transit. Is that anything like the experience it was even 10 years ago? I challenge anybody to tell me that it's exactly the same. Not a chance. People are not safe in this country anymore because we are overburdened with populations that have no investment. They do not give two shits about our social contract. What we think is due unto others and is a good neighbor means absolutely nothing to them. They're here for what we got, and they will abuse it at every opportunity. And that's not to say that every immigrant that ever came to Canada or every migrant was bad. No, this is an intentional importation of the bad ones since this guy came into power.
And illegal. They're trying to give citizenship to 500,000 illegal residents that came here illegally. As we're in a recession, as we don't have enough jobs, as we're at an affordability crisis, as there's like a living space crisis, all these problems are like, hey, you know what we really need to focus on, everybody? Giving citizenship to people that came here illegally. That's what we really need to focus on. What absolute insanity.
5,000 Gaza families?
Oh, that too, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like that's what, 20, 30,000 people? There's not two people in a family in Gaza.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for them. Stop sending bombs. Stop paying for the wars. Importing another 100,000 Ukrainians. Stop sending bombs. Let them live in their lands, because all they're going to do is come here and pirate and pillage, because they're not going to get what Trudeau's promising them.
Yeah. And I think Don Jr. made a good last comment here, since we're kind of wrapping up here. That governed with the guidelines of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's what the two pillars elected officials are supposed to govern with. Exactly. And if you violate that, which Trudeau has multiple times, he's kind of like shredded the Constitution in a number of ways. How do we not have the power to remove these people? Where's the investigation? Who's supposed to investigate them? How do you hold them accountable? Are they going to be punished for it? What's the consequences? How are we going to prevent anybody from doing it again? None of these questions are being asked, never mind answered and being acted upon.
Well, yeah, I was having a very tough conversation with my trauma therapist specialist, and the amount of people that are suffering from extreme trauma at the hands of our policing agent and enforcement agencies at this point is astronomical. And the problem is every one of them is asking, who is going to protect us from the people that are supposed to protect us?
Yeah.
And this is the scary part of being in Canada right now. And you know what? That was a part of my hell over the last week as well, is dealing with the trauma of police abuse. I can't deny it or hide it. Just by the nature of what I do, I have endured so much that I'm now experiencing anxiety at having to deal, extreme anxiety, just at the mere concept of having to deal with a police officer. And I'm supposed to be one of the tough ones in our country fighting all of this. And I'm walking this path myself. How do we get other people to get beyond the abuse when our protectors are the most dangerous people in our country? I've got some concerns.
Well-founded concerns, and it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's I was watching fella. His name is Niall Ferguson.
Niall Ferguson.
From the Ireland the other day, and he's right. go forth and be happy, because the end of the insanity is here. But the collapse is going to be ugly. And we are a long ways from seeing the end of the ugly in the collapse. But it comes back to that 100 years of hegemony that has destroyed basically our nations. And the roots of this evil stems from small groups of people in that have had that golden privilege. It's not our countries that are bad, it's small groups of people within our own countries. So when the rest of the world is looking at who do they point a finger at, sorry guys, we let them do it. So we are basically allowed ourselves to end up in the line of fire by all of this. And it's not that this was willful neglect or ignorance on our part. This is manufactured ignorance. Our own governments for decades made sure that we were incapable of having the right information to prepare ourselves adequately for what they're doing to us now. But that's all a part of the crime syndicate called politics, I suppose.
Yeah. Maybe I can just piggyback on that a little bit, because like the way that I look at politics is maybe a little bit what's the word? Not theoretical. Wishful thinking. Speculative. Yeah, close enough. Is that politics is supposed to be ideas, is the arena of ideas where people represent groups of people and ideas and goals for the purpose of achieving whatever those goals are, right? But if you're lying about the goals, you're lying about the information, and you're lying about what you're there to do, well, that's not what politics truly are, because we might agree on some stuff and we might disagree on some stuff, and politics is supposed to be like we're disagreeing about how we get to the same goal of working for our constituency, right? But if the constituency isn't even part of the equation anymore, and we're not even talking about the information itself, and we're just talking about a perfect example is like, Trudeau came out the other day with, I've got a catalog to fix housing, like the most ridiculous, dumb nonsense ever. Like, well, actually, we've got a catalog, bro. Like, what are we even talking about? Like that it's so far from relevant and smart and solving the problem. Like, why are you still in power, right? I keep coming back to this, is that if we are supposed to live in a true democratic society, we have to have the power to remove people that no longer represent us. Because I bet you, if you canvassed the entire country and said, does Justin Trudeau represent Canada? I bet you about 70 to 80% of people would say no.
There's a comment I can't share on here, but it's from Lubica. It says she came from a communist nation where they say politicians are the highest paid prostitutes, and that's 100% correct. And they have gotten so far removed from the betterment of our community, the future of our societies, the common good of the people, that it's nothing more than pointing fingers and accusing each other of who's the worst or the better criminal, who's hiding the crimes better. That's entirely what you can watch politics in the houses for a month straight, and that's all you're going to see is who's accusing who of being the worst person in the room, instead of any single person representing the voices of the people, of the little people, the people that are, and I mean, it's that's maybe sounds worse than what it is, but there's no effect in any of it. Pierre talks a good line right now, but he is just giving people the same lip service because it's popular right now. And now people have had enough, and we're going to take that route. But I fear the Russian roulette wheel is still spinning. And I'm afraid if we don't hold them to account on even more specifics before the election,
100%, bro.
We're going to lose the opportunity.
100%, and that's what I advocate for, because there's lots of people that are like, everybody's corrupt, just get out of the system. Well, the system breaks then, right? You're handing over the system to the people that are trying to destroy it. Yeah. I'm not down with going back to the Stone Age, bro. I don't want to live in the middle of the woods somewhere and be a farmer on the land. That shit sucks, dude. I've tried it. I don't want to do that. So I'd much rather we get our shit together and solve our problems so that we don't have to do that, because that is what you're going to have the choice of between slavery or living in the woods somewhere. And neither of those options are sufficient for me. So the only way to prevent that from happening is that we get our shit together and say, hey, you idiots, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. You don't represent us. Get the hell out. And we basically do a purge of all the corruption in our system and say anybody that touched anything that they did something they weren't supposed to do, get rid of them. You're out, you're done. And if you were a bad enough person, you're going to get charged and tried, and consequences handed down by a proper court that is not rigged, and you can't escape justice, because this is what it ultimately comes down to, is that if we don't have justice, we're just living in fantasy land.
Well, here's, I guess, how to boil it down to. I want us to believe in this system, but a system without representation or open discussion is incapable. It's impossible to find a solution or a remedy without a discussion.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
This
is why free speech is so important.
So we have to really get stronger at forcing the discussions that we need to have, not what the pollsters want us chirping about. So
questions, answers, actions, results, choices, right? You got to make choices, you got to ask questions, you got to get answers, you got to take action, and eventually you get results, bro. It's the hand of change right there.
Awesome stuff. Well, diving right into the deep end after a couple of weeks hiatus. Thank you so much, Bryce.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Maybe next week will be more structured. Don't hold your breath on that. I do have to address this one other comment up here, though, before we run away. Sorry. Yes, we are going to finish watching Years and Years tomorrow. The conclusion, double episode. I know that lots of people are waiting to see the conclusion of that dystopian nightmare coming true in our time. So tomorrow night at this one's a little bit later, 8:00 Eastern, but we'll see you all there for that. And we will see you same time, same place again next week, Bryce. And stay mighty, my fellow hostages. We'll see you next time.
Stay free.
In times of global instability, soaring inflation and massive debt, gold and silver have proven to be unshakable pillars of wealth. New World Precious Metals, based in Calgary, Canada, is a leading international brokerage. We offer an easy, secure and cost-effective platform for investing in gold and silver, including our international wholesale program and registered retirement savings accounts. Protect your money outside traditional banking with our physical precious metals, privately vaulted outside the banking system, at secure, insured exchanges worldwide. Gold and silver have been trusted assets for generations, with current projections indicating high returns. And with unprecedented demand from governments, banks and investors, there are now shortages. Precious metals thrive during inflation, geopolitical instability, and currency devaluation. Sound familiar? Now is the time to invest in gold and silver, whether in your international investment account or by transferring registered retirement savings accounts. Experience the security of physical precious metals, combining the safety of physical assets with the flexibility of being like your own bank, offering instant liquidity and a financed line of credit. With precious metals on the rise, don't miss this generational opportunity to protect your wealth. At New World Precious Metals, we ensure your wealth meets its potential. Contact us today and our personal brokers will guide you every step of the way.